Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're unpacking a script that is just wow. It's incredibly cinematic. It's called The Ant Protocol and the Great Deception. And let me tell you, this source material totally flips the script on unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs as we call them now. Instead of looking at government disclosure as some massive scientific breakthrough or aliens finally saying hello, the author argues something way darker. They claim what we're actually witnessing is a massive, highly coordinated spiritual deception. It's a high-stakes narrative built on a classic problem agitation solution framework, mixing raw military data with some really intense biblical warnings. I am super excited to dive into how they build this argument with you today.
So let's jump right into the hook this source uses to grab us. They call it the Ant Protocol. Just picture this. Imagine you're an ant in a backyard, right? You've lived for generations under this big oak tree. You don't see the homeowner. You're completely oblivious to this massive unseen presence, just going about your ant business around his boots, right up until the day he decides to spray the nest. According to the text, top-level physicists have actually used this exact analogy to describe our relationship with UAPs. The homeowner is finally stepping onto the grass, so to speak, and the author is warning us that a massive bait-and-switch is already in motion.
Okay, which brings us to section 1 of their framework, the problem, the tranche deception.
Think about this. For like 80 years, a highly classified legacy program has operated in the absolute darkest shadows, supposedly hidden even from sitting US presidents. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the valves are opening in what the source calls a tranche. A tranche is basically just a portion of something, but here it refers to these sudden, authorized dumps of classified UAP evidence from heavy hitters like NASA, the FBI, and the Department of War. The source looks at these rapid-fire headlines and, frankly, raises a massive red flag about the motive. Like, why is the most powerful government in history suddenly putting on this weird reality show with its most heavily guarded secrets? The timing of this sudden transparency? Yeah, the author finds it deeply, deeply suspicious.
And it goes way further than just document drops. The source makes this absolutely startling claim that the government is actively working to shape the narrative within religious communities. According to the text, pastors and religious leaders have reportedly been invited to secret, behind-closed-doors briefings. In these meetings, they're allegedly being shown materials that are literally not of this planet, and even given descriptions of reptilian-looking creatures. The author argues the whole goal here is to soften the ground, preparing them for revelations designed to permanently challenge and rewrite biblical texts.
This really hits the core of the problem phase. You see, the public perception is that our military is just out there passively watching and documenting these UAPs as they zip by. But the military reality, at least according to this source material, is that the government is actively creating magnets. They're actually using our nuclear assets to intentionally bait these entities into specific locations just to see if they bite. So we're not just birdwatching, we are fishing. And the author's absolute biggest fear is that the military has literally no idea what's on the other end of the line.
Now let's shift to section 2, agitation, military evidence versus spiritual warnings.
This is where the script takes cold, clinical military data and crashes it right into radical spiritual warnings to really crank up the tension. To agitate the problem, the source dives into a forensic psychological analysis of the Apollo 11 and 12 missions. They point out that during their 1969 press conference, astronauts like Armstrong and Aldrin didn't look like victorious heroes. Instead, they displayed massive levels of self-soothing and visible, genuine terror when they were asked about the lunar surface. On top of that, the source brings up declassified transcripts where astronauts reported bogey crafts hovering at 10 o'clock high. They even talked about these unstoppable double flashes of light, weird particles zapping right through their cabin walls that they couldn't do a single thing about. The argument here, this wasn't just innocent space travel, it was a terrifying encounter with something completely uncontrollable.
And the agitation gets even darker here. The author claims that while the rest of us are happily distracted by the sheer fascination of aliens, there is a really grim reality unfolding behind the scenes. The script states that dozens, yes, dozens of top-tier scientists tied to nuclear and space research have recently died or just vanished without a single trace. It paints a picture of a deadly, high-stakes cover-up surrounding this whole phenomenon.
So it really all comes down to how we define what we're looking at. The source lays out this fascinating contrast. On one hand, you've got the clinical terminology of CIA physicists and the military. They call them interdimensional beings. They track physics-defying bogey crafts, and they're gearing up for Disclosure Day. But on the flip side, the author maps those exact same phenomena to a strict, intense biblical framework. What the military calls interdimensional, the script calls spiritual forces of wickedness. Those crafts, they're entities manifesting from the unseen realm. And Disclosure Day, the author explicitly calls it out as the great deception prophesied in Revelation 13. Two totally different languages describing the exact same terrifying events.
To really cement this spiritual angle, the source digs into the messages that people allegedly receive from these visitors, and they point out a super consistent theme. These entities supposedly always reject the divinity of Jesus, and instead they heavily push for a one-world government, usually wrapped up in the guise of protecting the environment. The script is basically saying, hey, look at this data. The author truly believes these entities are pushing an explicitly antichrist agenda, but they're just masking it as cosmic enlightenment or universal evolution.
All right, moving into the final pillar of the author's argument, Section 3, The Solution, Biblical Cosmology.
For the source, navigating this whole era requires an absolutely rock-solid understanding of this specific cosmology. To grasp where these entities are really coming from, the script insists we've got to understand the concept of the three heavens. In this biblical worldview, it works like this. The first heaven is just our immediate atmosphere. The second heaven is the cosmos, outer space, the stars. And the third heaven is the literal throne room of God. By laying this out, the source is trying to make it crystal clear. These interdimensional beings aren't flying across the second heaven from some distant galaxy. No, they are spiritual forces manifesting directly from an unseen realm right into ours.
Now, here is what the source considers the absolute slam-dunk evidence that we're dealing with a spiritual war, not a biological or technological one. The script points to numerous documented cases where abductees are right in the middle of these utterly terrifying UAP experiences, but when they invoke the name of Jesus Christ, the encounters reportedly just end, instantly.
The author then throws out this incredibly provocative question to really drive the point home. If these are highly advanced biological aliens visiting us from Alpha Centauri, why on earth would a 2,000-year-old Hebrew name stop their physics-defying technology dead in its tracks? For the author, this is the smoking gun proving these entities are demonic, not extraterrestrial.
Because of all this, the source gives a super clear directive. The distraction? That's the ANT protocol. It's getting all swept up in UAP disclosure and giving what the author calls level 8 attention to level 2 importance issues. The solution, the main thing, is focusing 100% on spiritual discernment and the gospel. The author is practically shouting that getting caught up in the government's shiny new reality show is exactly what the deception is designed to make you do.
And that brings us to Section 4, Conclusion, Retain or Die.
The conclusion of this script does not pull any punches. It's framed as an ultimate, literal, life-or-death choice. It reminds us that the ongoing release of UAP files, all those government tranches we talked about, is nothing but bait. They want you staring at the ants so you don't notice the king. The explicit warning here is, do not trade your faith, do not trade the blood of Christ for the illusion of some secret knowledge or fake cosmic enlightenment that these entities are supposedly offering.
We've seen how this source perfectly uses the problem agitation solution framework, taking us all the way from CIA ant analogies and nuclear baiting to the sheer terror of Apollo astronauts and biblical cosmology. The script leaves its audience with one final deeply chilling thought to chew on as the government files just keep dropping. I'll leave you with the exact question the source poses to wrap up this explainer. When the sky opens up and the entire world is screaming, aliens,